welcome back to What Changed Your Mind. I'm Jen Diaz-Avedo, and I wanted to talk a little bit about anxiety. I was not what you would consider an anxious kid at all, or a teenager. I would occasionally have what I called like a blue day. I'm just feeling kind of blue today, but it was never a really big deal, and I could just give myself permission to like come home from school and put on my sweatpants and watch a movie that would make me cry and have a brownie, right? Like take a hot bath. I would just give myself permission to be gentle with myself. And so it was never a really big deal. But when you grow up and become an adult, you have a whole lot of other things that pop up, and you don't really have the luxury of just, pampering yourself for a day. You've got other people that rely on you. You have kids, you have jobs, you've got, chores, things that have to get done. And so I think I started to develop anxiety, or the first time I was aware that I had anxiety, I had two little boys, and I was a young mom. So I was probably like, 25 maybe. And one night I woke my husband up thinking that he was having a bad dream, because I was kind of in that sleep or awake state and could feel the bed shaking. And so I woke him up and I said, sweetie, are you okay? And he said, well, what? No, what's what? I said, you were shaking the whole bed. Were you having a nightmare? Were you? And he said, no, I wasn't having anything. Okay, well, we went to bed, and a couple of hours later, he woke me up and he said, it's not me, it's you. I've been sitting here watching you. You're like having tremors in your sleep. And I had started getting like this tightness in my chest that I would have. And, when you're having anxiety and you don't know that you're having anxiety, that not knowing whatever it is that you're feeling makes your anxiety worse. My grandpa on my dad's side dropped dead of a heart attack at 36 years old. So for me to be in my 20s and feeling like I couldn't catch my breath and having these tremors at night made me panic even more, because I thought, oh my gosh, is there something genetic happening that I don't know about? Am I going to drop dead of a heart attack? I can't die. I've got these little boys. And so that makes your anxiety worse. And back then, people didn't really talk about anxiety like they do now. Now it's okay to talk about, people know about it, there's medicines for it and all that. But when this was going on, it was still kind of a subject that you didn't admit to. You didn't admit that you had. So the first time I went to the doctor, the MD, blew me off. I said, I'm concerned something's wrong with me. I'm having these tremors at night, and I feel like I can't catch my breath. And she said, do you smoke? And I said, no. And she said, do you drink? And I said, no. And she said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 25. And she said, nah, you're fine. And basically blew me off and sent me home. Well, a couple more months go by and I'm still having these symptoms. And so I went to the nurse practitioner, who was amazing and totally took her time with me. And they ran all of these tests and they couldn't find anything. And she sat me down and said, I want to talk to you about something. And the way she handled it was stellar, because had she just said, maybe you're having anxiety, back then I would have been like, are you kidding me? I don't have anything to be anxious about. I'm not crazy. And she said, just I want you to just be open to the possibility that maybe you're having some anxiety. And I was like, I don't have anything to be anxious about. And she said, okay, all right, cool. Would you mind filling out these papers, this paperwork, and we'll take a look and see if maybe you might be having some anxiety. And I said, all right. So I started filling out these forms that she gave me. It was pages and pages of questions. Do you ever feel like this? Do you do this? And by the time I finished it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have anxiety. So I was lucky that I had that nurse practitioner that was amazing. Like the way she conveyed it was amazing, because I kind of would have fought it. Because back then, like I said, it was kind of like a weird, there was something wrong with you. And so she got me on an anxiety medicine, and it took a couple tries to find the right one, which is kind of a pain because you have to get on one for a little bit and see if it works. And the first one made me exhausted all the time, and so we tried out a second one, and it seemed to do the trick for a little while. It's funny, back then I had some people in my life who, when I did tell them, I've got some anxiety, they were like, well, you shouldn't tell that to anybody. You don't need to share that. Nobody needs to know. And that, it was kind of this like embarrassing thing. And it's just not, don't be embarrassed. And if you're experiencing, anxiety symptoms, and you don't know, go to a doctor and just say, I don't know, maybe I'm experiencing something, but don't be embarrassed about it. Because I remember after these people had told me, nobody needs to know that. I was at my oldest son was in kindergarten, and I was standing outside of their little playground with a bunch of other moms, and there was this other mom there who was younger than me, and I was a pretty young mom. And her little girl was in my oldest son's class, and I said, hey, how was your weekend? And she got all kind of flustered and embarrassed, and she said, I'm so worried. And I said, well, what? And she said, well, I had a panic attack. I've never had anything like that before. And she was so, because like I said, there was this stigma around it. She was so scared and concerned. And for some reason, I have always been one of those people that everyone spills their guts to. I have no idea why, but she started telling me all about this panic attack that she had. And I said, you don't need to be embarrassed or worry about that. Like, I'm on medicine for anxiety, and I told her my story. And to see the relief on her face that someone else would share their story, that someone else didn't think she was crazy, that she felt safe enough to share it with me anyway. But the relief on her face made me very aware that I needed to be more vocal about what I was going through and my anxiety and my symptoms, because there's a lot of different symptoms, and that it wasn't something to be embarrassed about, but that in sharing that I could help other people not feel so embarrassed or feel alone or feel like there was something wrong with them. So I kind of wanted to talk about that and just share those thoughts for a minute, because it's gonna go into some, that anxiety is definitely going to lead into some stuff that would happen to me later on in life. But just something that I wanted to share. I have a son who had some pretty severe, I ended up taking him to an emergency room for a panic attack. And I knew that he was having a panic attack. But when you have someone who is having an anxiety attack, if they don't know that that they're having an anxiety attack, those symptoms, like I said, are real, and you can't convince them because their heart is racing. They can't catch their breath. You can't say you're just having a panic attack or an anxiety attack. They think there's something wrong with them. And so I ended up taking him to an emergency room. He had malignant melanoma when he was 15. And he had watched his dad go through chemotherapy, so he was pretty panicked about his melanoma, and he had a panic attack about that. But I just kind of wanted to share those thoughts about anxiety, and it seems to be harder to handle it as you get older because there's just more to handle, but it's doable, and I'm going to share more and more and more with you guys to help you understand sort of what I've learned and hopefully help you guys with your journey as well. So thanks for watching.